Hello, everyone, and I want to thank you so much for tuning in for today's session, which is a part of our Male Role Models in Media webinar series hosted by the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center. Thank you so much. And today's seminar is going to be geared towards grades 9 and to 10. Awesome. So I thought before we started off the webinar that we could go around and introduce all the facilitators that we have here today. I'll start. My name is Lucas Schaefer. I'm the MENding Program Coordinator at Kawartha Sexual Assault Center. Alicia, would you like to go next?
Certainly. Hi, everyone. My name is Alicia Fisher. I'm the Prevention Education Supervisor with the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center. I work very closely with the MENding Program and the Young Men Leading Change Program. Andrew?
Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew. I'm a social worker in the Peterborough area, and I'm a volunteer with the MENding Program at Kawartha Sexual Assault Center.
Steven.
I'll go last. My name's Steven Dykstra. I'm a volunteer here as well with the MENding Program, and you guys are going to learn a lot tonight.
Oh, thank you so much, Steven. And with that, now that we're all introduced to each other, let's get started. Awesome. So we're going to be starting off by talking about what we're going to be talking about today. So let's look at that list. So first off, we're going to talk about who we are at the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center and what we do, what services we have available, and what we do counseling-wise as well as public education-wise. After that, we're going to talk about who and what male role models are, talking about what constitutes a male role model and what defines a relationship between them. Then we're going to be talking about who do we see as male role models in our personal lives as well as in the media. Then we're going to be asking ourselves, what is our relationship between these men? What does it feel like and what does it look like? And then we're going to be finishing off by asking ourselves, what can we do to make sure we're engaging with media and the men that we see in media in a healthy way? Awesome. So who are we at the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center? Well, we're based in Peterborough, 150 King Street, and we support people of all genders who are impacted by sexual and gender-based violence, either recent or historical. And we support those survivors by providing individual and group counseling for youth and adult survivors, as well as their supporters. We do something awesome at the center called psychoeducation, which is where we take the loved ones and supporting community, like supportive people in their lives and let them know about like what trauma does to the body and how that affects and how like the impacts of the violence that they face, they're gonna kind of what that's going to look like. So it's basically just a way of informing the loved ones of survivors how to better help the people that they love. We also provide advocacy and accompaniment services. So if you're a survivor looking at your options and trying to figure out what you can do, how you can navigate different crisis supports or victim services, we have people at our center that can help and be there with you, either going to the hospital or making an official report or something along those lines. And on the public education and prevention education side of things, we go into the community and teach, just like what we're doing right now. We teach a variety of topics to a variety of different kinds of people in high school, grade school, university, and college, and as well as in the workforce. And a part of the public education piece at Kawartha Sexual Assault Center is the MENding Program. And the MENding Program is a male ally leadership program that engages men in ending gender-based violence. And how we do that is we talk about what gender-based violence is, what it looks like in our society. We also talk about what it means to be a man and kind of the negative impacts of what the current dominant like narrative around being a man is, and talk about what are some of the options that we have surrounding that. We also talk about what is consent and what's a healthy relationship, and then how to be an active intervener. So how to take the knowledge that we just learned in those previous topics and apply them in our everyday life. At the end of the program, we encourage participants to continue their own learning by teaching the content of the program. Awesome. And we also offer a 24 crisis line, text phone line, and web chat support that we're going to be letting you folks know about at the end of the webinar. So keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, and we're located in Peterborough and serve the City of Kawartha Lakes, Haliburton, and Northumberland. And with our MENding Program, we also work very closely with various OHL hockey teams, which has been super awesome. So just want to add that.
Thanks so much, Alicia. Another program that we have that's connected to KSAC is the Young Men Leading Change Program. is very similar to the MENding program, except it varies in its length, right? We have 8 weeks to go over these awesome topics. And we also have a project that the participants do together to really like do something, right? So this is the kind of another element of the ways in which they can apply their learning. This program is specifically designed for racialized and newcomer men. So if you're a racialized and newcomer man and want to engage in ending gender-based violence, reach out to the email that you see on the screen so that me and Taconi, our awesome youth facilitator, can help you do that. Awesome. So we're going to start off this conversation today by talking about what is a role model and who are our male role models. So if you're an educator watching this webinar, there's a time that you can pause and ask the men in your room, what is a role model and who are their male role models? Awesome. So to get down to brass tacks, a role model is just someone you look up to and aspire to be. It's something that it's someone that you see value in and want to like emulate that value in yourself as well. If you think they're funny, they could be like what your ideal funny guy looks like, and that's something that you're striving to be. It could also be someone who you think is a good leader. When I was growing up, I really looked up to Jim Carrey because when I was a kid, and a little bit now too, I really admire how funny he was and really aspired to be as funny as he was. So like I would always look up to him and ask myself like, what ways can I be more like Jim Carrey? Do some of our other male facilitators want to share their male role models? Maybe Andrew, you can go first, and then we can go Stephen next.
Yeah, sure. Well, when I was pretty young, it was Ben Johnson, who is kind of a real example of how, you know, role models can be kind of dual and kind of turn out in different ways, and you can have complex relationships with a role model, all the way into, you know, when I was in university, just intellectuals like Noam Chomsky or historian Howard Zinn, who had some really exciting ideas.
Wow, that's awesome, Andrew. And before we take it off to Stephen, how are the ways in which you learned about those role models in your life?
Oh, wow. I think just, well, that's a hard question. Just in a number of ways. I mean, I think, you know, with someone like Ben Johnson, I was just so enamored and impressed with what he was able to do with his body, and then versus, you know, some of the role models later in life, just, you know, what they stood for, and the interesting ideas they engaged with, and how they challenged me to sort of think and grow.
That's awesome, Andrew. Thank you so much for sharing that. Stephen, when you think about male role models in your life, who do you think of?
For me, my first thought goes to my dad. He's been obviously a consistent father figure throughout my entire life, but just the ethics and the characters that he holds himself to every single excuse me, every single day have been incredible. Even talking to him like last week, telling me about his work as an RN, I'm blown away by the standard that he holds himself to. So for me, I try to be like that as much as I can every day.
Wow, that's awesome, Stephen. Thank you. And I think you both really emulated the kind of two conversations that we're going to be having here today. More on that later. First, I want to talk about what constitutes a relationship, right? When we ask ourselves how we're related to these male role models that we have, we think about like being connected, right? We're connected in some way. Either it's just through that admiration connection, or more along the lines of like Stephen, personally knowing your father and being close with your father and seeing all sides of him, right? But this is an awesome thing, right? Like and I think we can go into the next slide to really emphasize this point, right? There are a lot of ways in which we can like meet and learn about these role models. We have our role models in our own life, like our father, our brother, our uncle, our grandfather, our classmates, our teammates, our team members on our sports teams, right? But then we also see male role models in media, right? We see them through the books that we want to read, the kind of ideas that we find really fascinating and really challenge us, right? That could be also through music or like podcasts, right? Through TikTok and Instagram. And we can even see male role models in video games, right? And this brings out another kind of like element, right? Is that sometimes the male role models that we look up to aren't even real people sometimes, right? They just are this embodiment of a value that we want. Yeah, so it's super fascinating. So to dive more into that kind of media element, we're going to ask ourselves, what male role models do we see in media? Who are the men we look up to in media? If you're an educator, you can pause the webinar here. You can ask the men in your group, who are the male role models that they see in media very often? Awesome.
Maybe you can ask the facilitators here, who are the more media role models they have?
Totally. Stephen, do you have any people that you think of that like come to mind as a male role model in media?
It's a very good question. That's a very good question, Lucas. I'm having a hard time thinking of one at the moment. Andrew, would you mind bailing me out here while I think?
Awesome.
I will have to go to the go-to sports. Yeah, I probably these days Kyle Lowry. I just love watching Kyle Lowry battle through a tough game. So in terms of popular culture and media, that's the first person who comes to mind for me. But actually, as well, I don't get to watch it quite as much. But Christine Sinclair, Canadian women's soccer player, she has a similar kind of doggedness and savvy, and not necessarily blow your mind athleticism, but just really palpable leadership on the field, or like Kyle Lowry on the court. Christine Sinclair.
Yeah, that's awesome, Andrew. Thank you. Stephen, do you have any?
Yep, I got one.
Let's go for it.
So he's an actor and he's also like a professional strongman. His name's Thor Bjorksson. You guys might know him as the Mountain from Game of Thrones.
Oh.
So he's had a very successful acting career, as well. The dedication that he's put into his training. For example, he holds the world record for the deadlift. I believe it was something, I forget if it was over 1,000 kilograms or 1,000 pounds, but it was absolutely inhuman the amount of weight he lifted. So the dedication and the training that he puts in, much like professional athletes, incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Stephen and Andrew. Sometimes when we ask this question, especially in different public education settings, we often get superheroes, right? We get folks asking and telling us that like they look up to Tony Stark because he's really rich and he's able to use that money and influence to assemble like a team of superheroes, right? Or Superman, right? He's someone who's invulnerable and is really tough and can really take a beating and like do the right thing with everyone, right? Were there kind of superheroes that you looked up to when you're growing up? Maybe Andrew and then Stephen can go next.
Oh geez, I don't know. Oh, I don't know about superheroes. Yeah, wasn't really ever the biggest comic guy, but yeah. So I'm not sure if I have a specific answer to that.
Yeah, that's totally all right. Stephen, do you have something to add to this?
Spider-Man from day one, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. The fact that he was just some kid that got lucky with powers and had all, the classic, with great power comes great responsibility. That I absolutely loved it.
That's awesome. I have a feeling that catchphrase is going to come up a little bit later in this webinar, so keep that in mind. Thanks for sharing, Stephen. Yeah, like when we think about, oh goodness, and like this is something I mentioned a little bit before, right? That sometimes the male role models that we look up in media are fictional characters, like superheroes, and then sometimes they're real people, right? They're content creators on YouTube. From left to right here, we have some of the most like influential and popular YouTube channels. We have PewDiePie, Markiplier, Jacksepticeye, Logan Paul, and KSI, right? These folks, PewDiePie is the second most popular YouTube channel, period. Like internationally, he's known everywhere, right? So these are the faces of men that we see all the time, whether we're just like scrolling around on YouTube and some of their videos are suggested to us, or we're active like community members, right? And going beyond just YouTube, right? We have also musicians, right? Some of the most popular musicians also have a huge following, like Harry Styles, Bruno Mars, Tyler the Creator, Post Malone, and Drake, right? These people have millions of Instagram followers, right? And this isn't even including like all the people that listen to all their music and stuff and their other social media accounts. And then we have sports role models like we were talking about before, like Andrew was saying. We have Cristiano Ronaldo. We have Alexander Ovechkin, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, LeBron James, and Leo Messi, right? These people are super influential, and a lot of men look up to them for the reasons that we shared, because they have values that we want. Their dedication to their sport or their trade is like really admirable, right? But when we look at these numbers, they're pretty huge, right? And when we take that into account with like what these folks really are, which are they're human beings, right? We have a limit on the amount of meaningful relationships we have in our life, just because we're human and we have that limit, right? So as much as we'd want to, we can't be everyone's friend. It would be really hard to remember the 107 million names, right? So what that kind of suggests, what that kind of suggests is the kind of relationships that we have with these male role models in media is a lot different than the kinds of regular personal relationships we have in our everyday life, right? And some psychologists have like kind of suggested a cognitive limit, just a memory-wise, effort and energy-wise, into the number of people that we can have in stable social relationships. The golden number that came out of Dr. Dunbar was that we can sustain and remember 150 meaningful relationships and connections. Meaning, so this is like, you know someone really well, you know how they interact with you, and you also know how they interact with other people, right? So that's like a meaningful relationship. That's a definition of a meaningful relationship. And there's a huge gap, right? We don't see these media influencers with 150 followers. We see them with 150 million followers. What do we think about this? Maybe we can go to Andrew and then Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, I think as you're suggesting, and as I imagine the study you're talking about suggests, there are like, we have biological limits to just how many people we can really actually connect with in real life, and actually know, in a way that's completely different from social media. And then there's going to probably be some variation. We're all different people, right? Some of us are more introverts than others. Some are more extroverted. So, and of course that's okay. Maybe we just throw our meaning and our efforts into some fewer relationships, but those are a little more important to us. Yeah.
100%, Andrew. Thank you for mentioning that. Stephen, do you have something to add?
Lucas pretty much covered it, as well as Andrew there. So yeah, just touching back on what Andrew was saying, it's hard to have genuine relationships with that many people, as the study shows here. 15 good friends, like classmates, or just people in your peer bubble. Once you start stretching yourself too thin, then that can start hindering your other relationships. So it's a little bit of a balancing act between being friendly with everybody but maintaining a good social bubble.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Awesome. Let's go on to the next slide. Yeah. So now we're going to be talking about like what those kind of relationships look like between or rather what those relationships feel like between ourselves and our male role models, right? When we read and watch and engage with the material that they offer to us, and whether that be just like their interviews, the movies that they're featured in, videos of them doing their sport or doing their trade and activity, we start to feel like we get to know them and that we're close to them, right? And something that's awesome to note about is that, like, well, not only, yeah, when we're engaging in these relationships with these male role models, it's not a one-on-one, it's a one to a ton of people, right? So not only do we feel like we're getting close to one person, it also feels like we're in an awesome community. What are other benefits to being in relationships and being connected with these male role models? Maybe Andrew and then Stephen can speak to this.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes it can feel like their story and who they are has a connection to our story and who we are and who we want to be. I think that's really great, as long as we maybe bring some balance and thoughtfulness into that, which I think we're going to talk about a little later.
Awesome, thank you, Andrew. And Stephen, do you want to say anything before we move on?
Yeah, touching on what Andrew was saying there, the whole idealism of, wow, I can be like this person. It's really good to shoot for, and you can take the positive qualities that person has and apply that to your own life. That's awesome. But being mindful that somebody in the media spotlight is that while they are absolutely their own individual person, there is a persona that they're portraying. So not giving up parts of yourself to try to fit that image.
Well said. Thank you so much, Stephen. Now we're going to contrast the ways that we feel in these relationships with what the relationship actually looks like, right? Maybe Alicia can do a demonstration of what this kind of relationship often looks like.
Yeah, this relationship often, looks like us just sitting here doing this. And, when I get a somewhat like a superstar or whatever to like or to comment or to share something that I've shared about them, like that means the world, right? Like, and we hear from fans of people that or that comment like pulled them out of a depression. It made them just so happy. And it's like this, as humans, we crave this connection. We crave connecting to other people and that attention. And so when we get that attention, we're not only getting that attention from the person that we look up to, but also their entire fan base, right? Like everyone saw this person comment. And so it can really breed this deep connection. But again, this is in a social world where we're literally just doing this.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alicia. Do some of our other facilitators want to speak to what this relationship looks like in contrast with what it feels like? Maybe Andrew can go first and then Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know how applicable I can sort of make this, but it's just there's a disconnection. There's a lack of, there's a different feeling and different there's a different sense we have deep down, it's a little more surface level, it's fleeting. It comes and it goes. It's exciting, or it can be to sort of engage with our interests or those we look up to, but don't actually know as real people when the cameras or the Zoom or live sessions are turned off.
Absolutely. Well said, Andrew. Thank you. Stephen, do you want to add anything before we move on?
I feel Andrew hit the nail right on the head there.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephen. So now we're going to be talking about more along the lines of the drawbacks to these kinds of relationships, right? When can these relationships become unhealthy, right? And something that different social psychologists have talked about is a parasocial relationship. And a parasocial relationship is defined as a one-sided relationship where one person extends a lot of emotional energy, interest, and time, and the other party, the persona or content creator in this case, is completely unaware of the other's existence, right? And that can be super frustrating. If you're a really dedicated fan and you are devoting a lot of your life into maintaining this connection that you have with this male role model, you could expect some something back, right? I'm putting so much effort into this relationship and I'm not receiving all the things that I want out of it back, right? I'm doing so much for you. I'm watching all your stuff. I know you, right? So that's where we can start to see that there's a unhealthy relationship forming, right? And I think what was referenced before, I think by either Andrew or Stephen, was that we can start to comparing ourselves with this person, right? And how that's kind of an unrealistic comparison because that's not all of them, right? That's only one side of them that they've made for us and wanted to show us, right? They have a lot more executive control over what their public image looks like compared to just having a personal interaction, right? Awesome. Before we move on, are there any other kind of points that people want to mention? Maybe Stephen can go first and then Andrew.
Yeah, just touching back on what you were saying there, how the image somebody's portraying, especially if they're in such a big, if they're put on a pedestal socially, they can seem perfect, the idealistic, the goal to reach for, but they themselves have issues that aren't apparent. So if you're constantly striving to be like someone who seems perfect, but you're not, because frankly nobody is, then that can lead to a lot of unhealthy expectations about yourself.
100%. Thank you, Stephen. Andrew, do you want to add anything before we move on?
I think sometimes we can just have really unrealistic expectations of role models, and sometimes, just going back to this sort of sports metaphor, we can sometimes feel very angry or say really nasty things about a player if they don't win or if they have a bad game. So it's almost like this transaction, like we're owed this this perfection that we were just referencing, right? And that's not really it's kind of a dehumanizing thing to expect from somebody else who is a real person behind the camera and outside of the live sessions.
Yeah,
Outside of
100%, Andrew. Thank you so much. That was really well said. Let's talk about other ways in which these relationships can become unhealthy. So, and like we were talking before about having so much power, right? Like these content creators and some of these like personas may take advantage of that level of influence and like power that they have, right? This kind of social power, and share harmful ideas or deliberately share mistruths and intending to like scare, mislead, and motivate their audience to do or support certain things, right? And what this can look like is using the kind of drawbacks that we were talking about before and the unhealthy advantages of being a persona, right? You can expect people to come to your side, right? And defend you, right? So if you wanted to share harmful ideas, you could be bigoted under the guise of humor, right? You could say something really harmful and then laugh, knowing that a lot of people are looking up to you and going, this is the ideal, this is perfect, I should be laughing too, right? So they start using this power for their own influence and for their own ideas and for their own benefit, really. And we also see them encouraging this kind of one-sided relationship. They will deliberately call you friends or family, right? And really tell you that they're really devoted to you and they appreciate and sometimes even like love you, right? They encourage this kind of unhealthy relationship with them because they want to use you. And this is really scary. So I'm gonna share it to some of the other facilitators. What are we thinking of? What are kind of ideas that are surrounding this? I'll open up to all the different panelists. So we'll go Andrew, Stephen, and then Alicia before moving on.
Well, when I was thinking about this aspect of relationships with role models, I was really thinking of humor. Humor really came to mind, and how it can be, humor can be hurtful, or it can be healing. Humor can kind of perpetuate messed up stuff in our society, or it can challenge it in really like thoughtful and humorous ways, in a disarming way and sort of a fun way to get at serious stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking of comedians, a lot of comedians are often a mixture of those two, or some comedians are maybe a little more one or the other. But that's one way to look at humor. Is it hurting others? Is it just silly and fun? Or is it maybe even healing in a way?
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Andrew. Stephen, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, kind of just going off of what somebody's trying to portray through humor or through other means. The person who's portraying the message, they do have their own goal, whether it be conscious or subconscious. So I think it's really important that we use a lot of critical thinking when we're taking in these ideas, realizing that this person, let's say somebody's using their platform to target somebody or an organization. You have to take the step back and think, okay, what is the reasoning for that? And not just blindly saying, no, these people are terrible, when really that's not what you think. That's what the person you're idealizing thinks. Mm-hmm. So it's important to consider those points.
Well said. Thank you, Stephen. And before moving on, do you want to add anything to this slide, Alicia?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, this all is very much one-sided, right? When we're looking up to people in the media and following them, liking them. And it becomes really unhealthy when it gets to the point where we hear that ding on our phone and we have to go watch that video. We have to go watch that live stream. We have to go like that photo, comment, share it, etc. We are almost like indebted through our phones, through our videos and our laptops, tablets, what have you, to this individual, right? And so, when does this become unhealthy? Well, the folks on the social medias, especially more like YouTube and TikTok, Instagram, a lot of this is for clout, right? It's for attention, and it's to essentially like up their value, up their ante. They care about their subscribers because that's ultimately making them money. But if them making money takes them to a certain area where a lot of people end their lives and they decide to film that and make jokes in those areas, a lot of us suffer with that. A lot of us think about that. A lot of us experience that in our everyday lives about people taking their own lives, right? And so, this type of manipulation can be really harmful, and it can be really kind of psychologically polarizing, right? Where we love this person because they're so funny, they're amazing, they drive cars into pools, and that is absolutely hilarious. But on the other hand, they're causing a lot of harm. They're saying inappropriate things, and this really creates a high level of like, what do I do? But do I just ignore this and just focus on this? So yeah, very unhealthy.
Yeah, well said, Alicia. Thank you so much. And I think I wanna clarify something really quick to all the folks watching at home. Having these kinds of relationships is okay. Having men that you look up into your life is awesome, right? And in the kind of digital age that we're in, especially now, we're going to be like spending a lot of time at home and online. They're almost going to be inevitable, right? But we just have to find ways to engage in these relationships and these connections in a healthy way, right? So we're going to talk about that now. I think a lot of our panelists were kind of like dovetailing into it. But if you're an educator watching this webinar, please pause and ask the men in your room, what can we do to engage in these relationships in a healthy way, right? What's a way that we can take the benefits from this relationship and leave the drawbacks? Awesome. So I think the long and short of it is that we have to be mindful, right? We have to be conscious consumers of content, right? We have to be critical of the people that we're watching, and understanding that like this is something that is their job, right? Understanding the different motivations and projects and intentions that they're going to be having, right? And this can also be done while balancing like watching and consuming their content with being with other people in our lives, right? Maybe talking about our male role models like in our own lives, right? So that we're going to be avoiding this kind of one-way relationship being the sole way we interact, right? But do any of our other facilitators want to speak to this? Any other different ways that we can engage in relationships with these male role models online? Maybe we can go Andrew, then we can go Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, I think nobody is all good or all bad, right? I mean, we all have flaws, and for some people, we may find some really troubling things about them, and sometimes it's possible to take the good with the bad, and to continue to engage with someone who we admire, but maybe are troubled by some other things they're doing or saying. And sometimes we may have to take a stand and kind of realize for ourselves and ask ourselves tough questions about what is really important to us. Sometimes it takes some courage to even push back against stuff we recognize that may be being said on social media that's harmful to others. So I guess it's kind of about connecting with ourselves in that regard as well, and paying attention to what we hear and how it sits with us, and then acting accordingly, responding accordingly.
Mm-hmm. Wow, thank you, Andrew. Stephen, do you have anything to add before we move on?
Yeah, in terms of just taking the good from the bad, going back to, and I feel we're really reinforcing this point, is that the person behind the camera does in fact have faults, and it's up to the consumer, it's up to us and to you guys to really pick and choose what parts of the message you want to impart into your own life. So taking the positive, leaving the negative aside, at the end of the day, it's up to you what the message you receive is.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Stephen. And
I also
thank you, Alicia.
Yeah, no worries. Sorry. I also like to think about, what are our relationships in our everyday lives with our friends look like versus how they look online, right? So if you have a best bud, if you have a bro who you feel as if you're constantly reaching out to, you're the one constantly saying, "Hey, let's hang out. Hey, let's do this. Hey, can I see what your, how your math test is going?" or homework, I should say, not a test. But like if you feel as if you're constantly putting all this effort and energy into a relationship that with your friend, that's going to be quite exhausting. But yet, how does that translate to social media, where you're the one commenting, sharing, liking, talking about this person outside of the social media world, right? Like, how much effort are you putting into your virtual relationship versus your physical ones? And how do we make a balance, or how do we maybe value one over the other?
Yeah, thank you, Alicia. we've been talking about what we can do as fans and followers of these male role models online, but we also have to keep in mind that they have a responsibility too, right? With great power comes great responsibility. Awesome. I'm glad we've gone full circle. Right? They're in charge of the message that they put out, right? And also its impact. And as well, like while we're being conscious of the things that we're choosing to take from these guys, they have to be conscious of what they put out into the world as well, right? So the ways in which they can kind of encourage healthy relationships with their fans is by putting down boundaries, right? I'm not going to be everyone's friend here, right? I'm making this content for this explicit purpose. I don't want to like foster these kinds of relationships that are going to be ultimately like harmful if engaged in the wrong way, right? And we can follow creators and celebrate creators who draw those boundaries by respecting them as well, right? What other kind of like ways do we think that these male role models can encourage these healthy relationships? Maybe we can go Andrew, Stephen, and then if Alicia wants to speak, Alicia can go next.
Yeah, I think we should look for social media leaders or role models in general to not attack people for raising critical points. I mean, sometimes we can raise concerns of people's behavior or a view that they express, and too often these days the response to those kinds of questions is to attack the person asking the question, not the view they're saying, but the person themselves. And that could be a real red flag for us as sort of followers if we see someone in a leadership role doing that. So on the other hand, if a role model is being patient, engaging thoughtfully, and not like seeking to push them away or exclude them or degrade them, but actually inviting them into the discussion and giving their views some respect, then those are sort of good signs, and those are I think ways that role models can engage healthily.
Thank you, Andrew. Stephen, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I feel the way that the content creator engages with their fan base is really, really important. Not using their influence inappropriately to get either their own gratification or to take it, excuse me, to take advantage of their group. It's looking at the point here to avoid using their influence for personal gain. The influence that they have over other people and their fan base is really cool because they can get a message out there, but at the same time, people who really are craving the interaction from that person, it could be harmful if the influence is used in the wrong kind of way.
Perfect, Stephen. Awesome. Alicia, do you have anything to say before we move on?
Yeah, certainly. I definitely think more about those social media content creators as opposed to like athletes and stuff like that. But no, they're all in there. So like essentially like a lot of this, you're creating an income from it, right? You get an income from how many subscribers you have. You create an income from your performance on the field or on the ice, on the court, etc. And so with that type of income, you also have to be aware that if you're going to just start destroying a car for no good reason, you have to understand that there are people out there who can't afford a car, who can't afford kind of even food in their everyday lives. And so your actions are having impacts on people, right? Things that you're saying, even though you may not intend them to be that bad, if you're going to be like flashing yourself to someone, you may not have intended that to be that bad because you're drinking, but think about the impact that that's not only having on the people that you're involved with in your everyday life, but also the impact of the people reading that, right? So they're going to think, well, if they're doing that behavior, they're not getting in trouble. Maybe you are getting in trouble, but they're able to financially get out of that. Not everyone can get out of trouble like that, right? I don't know if I'm making sense there, but essentially these people have a lot more resources and access to help when they find themselves in trouble that the everyday person may not have. So to just really think about how these people are able to put up content that allows them to kind of weave in and out of trouble, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Thank you so much, Alicia. Awesome. So we talked about a lot today, so we're just going to quickly wrap up. We talked about who and what male role models are. We talked about where we see these men in media and who some of the most popular ones are. We talked about what we feel in these relationships with our role models can be different than what they actually are and what they look like, right? That we need to be conscious of that disconnect, right? We also talked about how it's good to keep a balance between personal relationships and relationships we exclusively have through media. Keeping a balance is really important. And we also talked about how having men you look up to is awesome and enjoying their content is great. But we have to stay critical. We have to be conscious consumers of content. We have to be critical of like not only the content creator, but also the content they make, and understand that this is something that they've made for us. It isn't the real them. This isn't like something that is going to help us get to know them. This is something that we're enjoying and using for and trying to replicate ourselves, right? We're seeing the good of it and trying to stick on to that. Yeah, awesome. So if you're an educator watching this, please fill out the survey. We want to make sure these male role models in media webinars are as great as they can be. So we need your feedback for that. So please fill out the survey. And the 24/7 crisis support lines that we have on the screen now are for text, phone, and an online web chat. If you don't have enough time to write down the different numbers, they're all listed on our website, KSAC.com. And with that, I want to thank all of the facilitators here and also everyone watching. Does anyone have any last things that they want to say? Maybe we can go Stephen, Andrew, and then Alicia.
Sure, yep. Just that final point there, being a critical consumer. Being critical in what you're taking in isn't a bad thing. It's good to take the message and figure out what the purpose behind that is, be it from a content creator, videos, the media, everything, being cognizant of what you're actually taking in. It's only a good thing. It's only positive.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephen. Andrew?
Yeah, just pretty simple. Just trying to be aware of how we can connect to role models and how that can shape our values and our sense of ourselves and how we're in relationships with others.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. And Alicia, take it away.
Yeah, certainly. There's no problem in having, Tony Stark as Iron Man as a role model, as I think everyone, most people would love to be a leader or have access to a bunch of financial resources. But it's important, as Stephen said, to be critical and to think about that, but also just think about how does your love and your passion for Tony Stark and Iron Man then impact your personal life and the connections you have with other people, right? And so we not only have to value the media role models in our lives, but also the role models in our like everyday lives, our physical lives, right? A lot of guys that we've had in this program talk about a father or a grandfather that they look up to, and I think what we hear time and time again is, well, they aren't perfect, but this is how they kind of overcome their flaws.
And you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.